Hello and welcome to the Craft Beer Corner. For today's beer review, we are jumping into a couple of beers that are different beer styles, but they share one common trait, and that is both of these beers are fresh hop beers. And if you caught our review from maybe 3-4 episodes ago where we were reviewing a fresh hop beer, you will know that that distinction is important. Beers can only call themselves fresh hop if the hops have made it from fresh picked off the vine into the beer, into the boil, being created within 48 hours. So there's only a 48-hour window from them being picked to getting into the beer at the brewer in order to label and call itself fresh hop. And it does most definitely make a difference. And, it's a nice kind of badge of honor, the brewers that get out there when it's time to harvest and get them done. And so obviously it's a short window and there's not that many beers that you can get. They're going to have that. And part of the shtick is they also like to get them shipped out very quickly. So they'll have, the date, best by date or date that it was brewed, typically proudly displayed so that you're going to be getting it just about as fresh as you possibly can. Nonetheless, for today's review, we've got Indeed Brewing Company's Fresh Hop Ale. This is a fresh hop pale ale. Clocks in at 4.9% ABV. They are based in Minneapolis, Minnesota, and they brewed this one with just a single hop mosaic in this one, and they did mention the IBU's 35 on this one. For beer number 2, this is Double Mountain's Killer Lion. This is a fresh hop IPA, clocking in at 7.8% ABV. They are based out of Hood River, Oregon, and they brewed this one with a blend of Cascade, Centennial, Citra, and Mosaic hops. So 4 really big high alpha acid content hop varieties there, as well as fresh hop. And they also listed the IBUs at 82 on this one. So 2 related beer styles, pale ale and an India pale ale, both of which are fresh hop from 2 different brewers. I've had beers from both brewers and I've enjoyed all that I've had. So I'm very excited to jump in today, and we're going to get started with the Indeed Brewing's Fresh Hop Ale. This is the pale ale of the bunch, clocking in at 4.9% ABV. Okay, so jumping right into the first beer of today's Fresh Hop beer review, we have got Indeed Brewing Company's Fresh Hop Ale. This is a fresh hop pale ale, clocks in at 4.9% ABV. They are based out of Minneapolis, Minnesota. This one was brewed with Mosaic hops, and they state that it clocks in at 35 IBUs. Now, IBUs is the technical measurement, international bitterness units, if you haven't caught many of my reviews. In general, you can use it as a guideline, grain of salt mostly. Everybody's bitterness perception is different. So a beer that has, 10, 15, 20 IBUs may taste super pungently bitter to somebody, but not to somebody else. And also the ingredient list and what it's brewed with does make a difference as well, not just the actual bitterness potential and quotient of the hops and what they extracted into it. But nonetheless, we're going to jump right in, starting with checking out this label here. It's got all sorts of adjectives describing fresh hops written all over the can. It's very nice design. It looks nice, all surrounded by a hop there, and a blue and green kind of theme going. But packed out, sticky, fresh, gooey, dank, ripe. All sorts of different descriptors. That's about the extent of the label art. So let's just get this cracked. All right, gently. We're going to get this poured right in the glass. Yeah, it's a nice looking pale ale right there. Looks very nice. Very bright yellow. Looks like it's forming a nice head here too. Okay, so we're not going to quite get that all. Ooh, this beer has quite a pronounced aroma. I can smell it from here. Wow, that smells so hoppy. Okay, visually, I could tell you it actually is a fair bit darker than your average pale ale. They tend to be a little bit lighter, brighter. This actually is a deep yellow color. Almost has little hints of orange running through it as well. And as is very common with fresh hop beers, there are some hop particulates floating around in it, which is not a problem for me. It's just extra flavor that's up in the beer. Give it a sniff. Oh boy, when you get right down on it, you can even smell it even bigger. Yeah, you can smell that mosaic hop. It does have a noticeable kind of blueberry aroma to it, and that's kind of, you can pick it out. It's not the main aroma for my money. It has this slight funky aroma to it, and indeed, if it's used in high volume, it can impart kind of funky characteristic flavors as well. But you definitely pick up the blueberry, and then there's this citrusy kind of element to it as well. So it's a very nice smelling hop. Certainly a very popular strain, and it smells very, very good. You can tell they put a lot of them in there, but nonetheless, the head has settled down a bit. Looks great, smells great. Let's jump in, give it a sip. Oh yeah. Oh, that's nice. That's very, very nice. So, it's very hop forward. The intensity of the hop flavor is really quite pronounced. I could say this beer, 35 IBUs, that's not that high, but my perception is quite a bit more bitter than that. It definitely has a very bitter presence to it. No question about it. But the fresh hop element of this beer, the overall freshness, the way that it tastes, you can definitely tell it does make a difference. It's a lot more pungent in terms of its intensity of flavor, and it's just a lot crisper. It's a lot brighter is the best way I could say it. Just the freshness of the hop. It adds just this, there's really no other way to describe it properly other than saying it just tastes significantly more fresh. It really, really does. They are aptly named. It for sure makes a difference. It's a very nice beer. Very well done here. I also like the malt bill that they chose for this because it's really letting the hop come through. It's not laden with darker, richer roasted, more caramelly kind of inclined malts, which are nice additions, but in something like a fresh hop ale or fresh hop IPA, whatever, any fresh hop beer that you're trying to let the freshness of the hop shine through, I think taking a lighter malt bill such as this is a really good idea. So you won't get these caramelly undertones and overtones that can kind of drown out and make the hop take a back seat to the malt bill. It's very, very nice. I'm going to jump in for another sip and explore the body and mouthfeel here while I start to pick apart the flavor elements. Body's medium light. It's only 4.9% ABV, so it feels reasonably appropriate. It's kind of on the border between the low end of medium and the high end of medium light. It's not super big. It's not imposing. It definitely feels lighter in the mouth. In terms of mouthfeel itself, it feels very much like you'd expect for a pale ale at this ABV range. Not super duper viscous, but there's a little bit of resistance. One thing I can say though is this one in particular, if you start to agitate it around the pellet, it gets ridiculously creamy. It just starts foaming up inside your mouth. Very, very creamy. Very, very silky. Gonna just top this off just another little bit. Yeah, the balance of the hops, what they're bringing to the table, and this malt bill, both of which I like very well, I really appreciate. Because you can get the sense of the malt bill. It's definitely in the back there, but the hop, no question, is the star of the show with this beer, as it should be in a fresh hop beer, in my opinion. It's very, very nice, and it's just very refreshing. The fresh hop beers, I've enjoyed all of them that I've had, and you can't get them all the time because there is a hop season, just as with any crop, but it's so nice. I'm going to jump in for final thoughts. It's just so hop forward. It's crazy. These fresh hop beers, it's so hop forward. It's hop intense. And all those classic mosaic traits come to the table. The same thing that you pick up in the aroma really does translate in this specific hop variety into the flavor. Little citrusy, little blueberry, little bit of funk. There's what I would describe as an underlying earthy quality to the hop as well. So it's one that kind of runs the gamut. It's a very interesting hop variety, and it's very popular for a reason. It brings a lot of different aroma and flavor elements to the table, and certainly notably that blueberry. You don't get that from I can't name another hop that imparts blueberry aroma and flavor. I'm sure there are some, but it's certainly the most common and the most widely used for that. And it's a very nice flavor and aroma combination. Very good beer. I'm going to take my time, sip on this, come up with my scores. When we come back, we will get to the second beer of today's fresh hop beer review. That is Double Mountain's Killer Lion. This is the fresh hop IPA of the bunch, and that one clocks in at 7.8% ABV. Okay, now moving on to the second beer of today's fresh hop beer review, we have got Double Mountain's Killer Lion. This is the fresh hop IPA of the bunch, 7.8% ABV on this one. They do list the IBUs at 82, so I do expect, and it's an IPA, it's probably going to be a lot more bitter forward than the Indeed Brewing. This one is brewed with a blend of Cascade, Centennial, Citra, and Mosaic, so they do have the Mosaic in common. And Double Mountain is based out of Hood River, Oregon. This is the second or third beer I've had from them. I had a couple different creeks, many reviews back. That's already gone live some time ago, months ago. But really good brewer. I enjoyed what they did. This will be my first IPA from them, so I'm really excited. In terms of label art, it's got kind of a tie-dye t-shirt, psychedelic kind of background with a lion on the middle, maybe wearing a crown perhaps. And the lion is actually got a mane that is in the shape of a hop, so it may be hard to tell, but the lion is kind of hop themed. So it's pretty cool. I like it. Nonetheless, let's get this cracked. And there's a hop on the top of the cap, by the way, in case you're wondering. All right, let's get this poured into the glass. Oh yeah, it's a nice looking IPA. Nice bright light yellow color. In fact, gosh, the pale ale was even darker in appearance than this IPA. That's a little funny. All right, not going to get this whole bottle in here. It's only a 12-ounce glass, maybe, if you filled it all the way up on these same glasses. Actually, yeah, now that I'm holding it up to light, it's almost identical in color to the prior beer. It just looked lighter as I was pouring it, probably because of a noticeable lack of floating particulates. No hop particulates floating in there. This is very much crystal clear. Quite active in terms of effervescence as well. I can see really fine, fast-moving champagne-like bubbles and a few little medium-sized ones coming up. So it's a mix of fine and medium, but dominant fine. You can see it did pour a very thick, luscious, creamy head. And yeah, that's quite thick. Very creamy. Yeah, really looks nice. Formed a great head. Let's give it a sniff. Oh yeah, there we go. So it's a little hard to get the aroma out of this until you get right up over the glass, but once you do, you can smell it quite clearly. It's got a blend of some very pungent hops, high alpha acid hops, but the dominant aroma that's coming through, to me, what I'm picking up is a mix of pine, citrus, tropical fruit, what smells most like a mix of orange and pineapple. And that's really about it. There's no real hint of earthiness. There's no real hint of kind of a tar resinous nature to it. But yeah, smells very good. Smells very good. Looks great. Had to settle down a little bit, so let's jump right in. Oh, yeah. Ooh. Oh, that's nice. That's a big IPA. Yeah. That's big, bold, pungent, fresh, intense hop flavors. And really nice balance between the hop intensity of the actual hop flavors themselves and the bittering. It's got a nice bittering kick that's really peaks at the same time as the intensity of the hop flavor once you swallow, and then it kind of backs off. So you're left with equal parts bitter, and all these hop flavors that are really sitting through. And what was interesting, I know all these hops intimately. I drink many beers that have either all of these or some of these or some variation thereof with pretty good regularity here. And what I found interesting was the kind of pineapple and orange aroma that I was picking up. That's not an aroma I commonly pick up from any of those hop varieties, but that's what it smelled like to me. And it absolutely does taste like that through in the beer. You don't typically get all the aromas in terms of flavor when you actually swallow the beer, but this one, it really does. It tastes very strongly of pineapple. It's very, very good. And I could tell you, aside from all the interesting fruit flavors that you get up front, in terms of where the flavor ride is going here to the end of the finish, which is, it's longish, it's above average, but it's not super, super duper long. But what you're left with is really more lingering combination of earthy and resinous notes, which I couldn't detect any real resinous notes in the aroma, but that's really what's coming through on the back end of the bitters. So it's got resinous and it's mixed with earthy, and it's about 50-50. And even though the bitters kind of backed off a little below the intensity of the flavors that the hops develop themselves, once it back down at the end of the finishes, it's going to the end of the ride. Really, all the hop flavors are kind of gone, and you're just left with these lingering bitters and their specific flavor traits. So it's really quite nice. This is a very good fresh hop IPA. I think this is one that a lot of people would enjoy. It's got its intensity, the biggest up front, but it backs off pretty quickly, and you're just left with all these interesting flavors that blend. But kind of on the back end, it's kind of more of a bitter enjoyer's finish to the end, because you're left with these distinctive bitter flavor characters and not so much the actual kind of fruit specific aspects of the hops. But let me jump back in for another sip and explore this body and mouthfeel. I'm going to think on this flavor development again. The body on this is somewhere between medium and medium heavy. It feels perfect for the ABV range. 7.8, it's kind of high end of medium for a standard IPA. It's very nice. It feels exactly right. The mouthfeel, same thing. This feels like a textbook IPA. It's not super viscous. It's not exactly flat. And it's got some carbonation to it, but it's not overtly carbonation. It just feels like a standard textbook IPA mouthfeel. That said, this one, much like the first we sampled, does get ridiculously creamy. If you do start to really agitate it around the palate, it gets crazy creamy, and very, very foamy, silky is the best way I would describe it. In terms of this flavor development, both sips I've had now, I'm really honing in on just how intense that flavor is up front. It's got a really big kind of hop flavor explosion that happens on the front side. And it's got all of these interesting flavors, and there's a lot, and frankly, all of these hop varieties that they chose, in tandem with being high alpha acid content hops, which are great for bittering, they all have very unique flavor profiles that they bring to the table, and they're all blending very well together. I'm going to jump in again because there's so much happening here flavor-wise. I want to make sure I can explain exactly how it seems balanced and the flavor develops. And in speaking of balance, this is another beer where I would say going with this classic lighter malt bill instead of getting some more deeply roasted ones is a really good idea, especially with a fresh hop beer where it really is all about the hop flavor and experience. Don't pick a malt bill that's going to potentially drown any of that out. And this does not. It's very well selected and very well put together. I like the balance and the ratio between the chosen malt bill and the amount of hops that they used. Now, I'm a massive hop head. I'm never going to turn down extra bitters, but don't get me wrong. This has plenty of bitters to go along with big, bold, intense hop flavor. Let's jump in for one more sip for final thoughts here. Ooh, it's just so intense once you swallow. Intense hop and bitter simultaneously. Just big burst. And it really is. It's like this orange, blood orange, and pineapple dominant flavor that comes through. And you get this earthiness and you get this resinous quality. Those are the major flavors that are coming through. There's suggestions of others, but that's the dominant flavor traits. And I would say overall, it's a pretty even mix of all of them. You're kind of getting them all in equal parts. Nothing's really vying for front runner for the flavors. And then after that first, 5-6 seconds, that's when everything kind of starts to dial down a bit. Then the kind of fruit elements that you got up front, they really dwindle away pretty quickly and just leave you with this earthiness and this resinous quality. It's very, very nice. It puts me in mind of a fresh hop West Coast style IPA, which I mean Bend, Oregon, and using that hop, you could call this West Coast style, probably fair game to do so. It's very, very nice. This is a real IPA lover's IPA. Just the freshness of the hops, the intensity of it, the balance of it, the selection. I think that they got everything right with this beer. I don't really have any criticism at all that I could say. I truly love this. This is a fantastic beer. I'm going to take my time, sip on this, come up my scores. When we come back, we will get both beers ranked from top to bottom. Okay, now that we've gotten to enjoy both of these beers, we're going to get them ranked, starting with the Indeed Brewing Company's Fresh Hop Ale. This was a Fresh Hop Pale Ale, clocking in at 4.9% ABV. They did list IBUs 35. This was brewed entirely with Fresh Hop Mosaic hops, and they are based out of Minneapolis, Minnesota. Starting with the aroma. The aroma on this beer was huge, and it smelled so good. There is no question that the fresh hop beer offerings really do make a marked difference in terms of freshness and pungency of both aroma and flavor. This was a great example. It was huge. It gets a perfect 10 out of 10. For the taste, very nice beer. For just a standard pale ale, they said 35 IBUs. That's not that high. It's kind of lower mid-range for a pale ale. But the taste was positively pungent. The hop flavors just smacked you right up front. And even though it wasn't as bitter as a standard IPA would be, it really had a nice bitter kick as well from those fresh hops. Mosaic is a really great choice. It imparts a lot of interesting flavors and aromas, and this was just tremendous. It gets a perfect 10 out of 10. For the body on this was okay. It was above average for a pale ale. 4.9, that's kind of low mid-range, so I didn't expect it to be that big, but for the range and the style, it was above average. It gets a 7 out of 10. Mouthfeel. The mouthfeel on this, kind of similar story with the body. It more or less felt as I expected. It was above average, but it wasn't quite like the top tier pale ales. It had a quality about it that was quite a bit creamier. Not that I disliked it, it's just a little atypical for a pale ale, but it wasn't overboard. So here it gets above average as well. It gets a 7. For the finish on this beer was very, very long. For, a pale ale that wasn't super, super pungent in terms of hop bitters, the bitters that did come through really did a good job lingering all the way to the end. And indeed, the actual hop flavor itself from the Mosaic hops really did a good job lingering to the end. It wasn't exactly top tier, but again, it was really, really close on this. I only docked 1 point. It gets a 9 out of 10. For the head and retention, this beer was just fantastic. It poured a beautiful, thick, lush, creamy head. Easily looked like it could have been pulled off of a tap, and it held true all the way to the end. It gets a perfect 10 out of 10. For the appearance on this beer was nice. I did think it was very nice looking. It was maybe just a little bit off from your standard color, but it didn't deviate that much. I only docked 1 point here as well. It gets a 9 out of 10. For balance, the balance on this beer I really, really appreciated. Well-selected malt bill, fresh hops and a good variety that they chose to use, and it really did make a big difference. The balance of the malt bill, which you could still clearly get as a great backbone, but this, much like their IPA cousins, is a story all about the hop. Pale ales are a hop-forward beer style. This was no exception, and it really paid dividends because all those beautiful hop aromas and flavors really came through and indeed helped last it on the end of a very long finish. I gave the balance a perfect 10 out of 10. Feeling in the intangible. I loved it. I really, really did. It's hard to beat these fresh hop beers. Be they pale ales, be they standard ales, you could do it with any kind of lager, really any kind of beer. Though most commonly I do see IPAs and pale ales since they're so hop-centric. But this was just tremendous. Big, bold aroma and flavor, and there was just not much that I could knock on this beer. Lost a few points in a few categories, but overall I thought it was very strong. I loved it. Gets a 10 out of 10. Finally, is an example of the style. Excellent, excellent pale ale. No question about it. Where it did lose some points, it lost enough that it's not exactly top tier, but overall the package was so strong, I thought it was just a great example of a pale ale, and indeed a fresh hop pale ale. I only docked 1 point here. It gets a 9 out of 10, which brings the total score on Indeed Brewing Company's fresh hop ale to a 91 out of 100. So this is well above average. This is a top tier pale ale, you know, across all categories, really, if you take the average. And frankly, I loved it. I loved it. This is one that I would recommend to anybody. And it's a beer, obviously, is just a pale ale, not an IPA, that isn't so intense that somebody just trying to get into hoppier beers, this would be one I would recommend. Very flavorful, very aromatic. I really enjoyed it. Moving on to beer number 2. This is Double Mountain's Killer Lion. This is a fresh hop IPA, clocking in at 7.8% ABV. They also listed IBUs on this at 82. It was a blend of Cascade, Centennial, Citra, and Mosaic hops. So all big, bold, high alpha acid content hops here. And they are based out of Hood River, Oregon. Starting with the aroma. The aroma on this beer was okay, though it was not particularly pronounced. I would say it was average, but you really had to get down over the glass and really start to pick up the aromas. Once you did, though, it smelled fantastic. It smelled very fresh, very hop forward. It just wasn't super pungent. I gave it high end of average. It gets a 6 out of 10. Moving on to the taste, I loved it. I absolutely loved it. The blend of hops in this beer just worked perfectly together. It tasted so fresh, just as fresh as it smelled, and the flavors were very, very pungent. And 82 IBUs, yeah, that maybe my personal perception was a little higher than that. It had a really nice bitter kick, and the hop intensity of both the flavor and the bitters lasted a very, very long time. They really came through. It gets a 10 out of 10. For the body on this beer was huge. For 7.8, that's kind of high mid-tier IPA range, but it was way bigger than that, and I really, really liked it. Gets a 10 out of 10. For the mouthfeel, same story with the body. It just nailed it here. This was a textbook, absolutely textbook IPA mouthfeel, and this had a little more substance to it, so it was a little bit thicker, had a little more resistance, but it felt perfect and went perfectly in balance in tandem to match that bigger body and the ABV range. It gets a 10 out of 10. For the finish on this beer was nice, though I was a little taken aback that it actually didn't have quite the same staying power as even just this pale ale did, especially with how hop forward and bitter forward it was, and the hop blend they used. It kind of died out quite a bit quicker than I anticipated. It was still above average though. It gets a 7 out of 10. For the head and retention, really we had 2 beers that just did it perfectly. Formed a beautiful, thick, lush, creamy head, and it stayed all the way to the end. It gets a perfect 10 out of 10. For the appearance, this was one of those IPAs that just checks the box for that's exactly what I picture in my head for an IPA. It gets a perfect 10 out of 10. For the balance, I absolutely loved the balance on this beer. This, yet again, is another beer where I think they picked the exact right malt bill. They picked the exact right malt bill for a perfect backbone to let these fresh hop flavors and aromas and bitters all come to the table, all in the forefront, and give it a chance to let the hop be the star. It succeeded with flying colors. It gets a 10 out of 10. Filling in the intangible. I loved it. I did. I just thought it was tremendous. These fresh hop beers are fantastic. The hop pungency is just so intense. The freshness is just so incredible. If you haven't had many of them, try to get your hands on some shortly after the hop picking season while they're still fresh. The fresher, the better. It gets a 10 out of 10 from me. Finally is an example of the style. This, much like the first beer, it lost some points in a few categories, and it was enough that I had to dock some points here, but overall I thought the entire package was so strong I only docked 1 point. It gets a 9 out of 10. That brings the total score on Double Mountain's Killer Lion to a 92 out of 100. So only 1 point between them, a 91 and a 92. Both of these beers were absolutely fantastic. If you're a fellow hophead, I do highly recommend both if you can get your hands on them. Folks, That's today's review. As always, I do sincerely appreciate you tuning in today. Please don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. And if you want to stay in the loop when our videos go live to YouTube, you can just click the notification bell icon. It's right next to the subscribe button. Until next time, keep it beer, keep it craft. We'll see you on the next one. Cheers.